Welcome. I am Daniel Hawthorne, and this is my confession. People said I had a gift for seeing what others missed. Numbers, weaknesses, motives, I could spot them all in a glance. That talent built me an empire before I turned 35. But somehow, I never noticed her. Her name was Isabel Gray. My secretary for 2 years, maybe 3. I am not sure when she started, because her presence was the kind you overlook even when it is right in front of you. She blended into the office the way background noise does, always there, yet never acknowledged. Her desk sat outside my glass office, perfectly organized. Not a paper out of place. She handled my schedule, my calls, my chaos, with quiet precision. Every morning at 8 she placed a cup of black coffee on my desk without a word. Every evening at 7 she left exactly the same way she came, silently. The others joked about her behind her back. They called her the ghost, sometimes the nun. Too pale, too modest, too plain. In a building full of polished ambition, she was the one no one looked at twice. I should have stopped them. But I did not. Maybe because she seemed untouchable in her stillness. Maybe because her silence made everyone else feel superior. Or maybe because I had become like them, bored with power, careless with people. One morning, I arrived early. The office was still empty, the city outside washed in the pale blue of dawn. Isabel was already there, sitting at her desk, hair pinned in its usual neat bun, typing. Her face glowed faintly in the computer light. She looked tired, but not weak, tired like someone carrying something too heavy for too long. When she noticed me, she stood at once. "Good morning, sir," she said. Her voice was calm, low, almost melodic. It surprised me. I had never really listened to it before. "You're here early," I replied. "So are you," she said, a faint smile ghosting across her lips. It was gone almost instantly. I walked into my office, pretending to check emails, but my mind stayed with her. I tried to remember if I had ever asked about her life, her weekends, her family. I hadn't. Why would I? She existed to make my days run smoother, nothing more. That afternoon, during a board meeting, my CFO leaned toward me with a smirk. "You know, Hawthorne," he whispered, "your secretary scares people. She looks like she'd report us all to HR just by breathing." I forced a chuckle. She's harmless. But later, when I glanced through the glass wall and saw her focused expression, I wasn't so sure. There was something in her eyes, discipline, maybe, or control, that didn't belong to someone who saw herself as ordinary. At 6 that evening, she knocked on my door. "Mr. Hawthorne," she said, "the Devereux deal contracts are ready. I left them on your desk for tomorrow's signing." "Thank you," I said. She nodded, turned to go. Then, for reasons I couldn't explain, I stopped her. "Isabel." She froze. No one ever heard me say her name aloud. "Yes, sir? Do you ever get tired of this place?" I asked. Her brow furrowed slightly. "It is a job, sir." "Not a sentence." "Feels the same some days," I muttered. She looked at me then, really looked. Her gaze met mine without hesitation, calm and steady. "Then perhaps you are the one who needs a break." I should have laughed. Instead, I felt something I hadn't in years seen. After she left, I stared at the closed door for a long time, wondering what she saw when she looked at me. Probably just another arrogant man in a glass tower. And yet, as I sat there surrounded by silence and city lights, I realized that for the first time in a very long while, I was curious about another human being. Curiosity is dangerous for men like me. It means something is beginning. The day we closed the Devereux deal should have felt like triumph. Hundreds of millions in profit, 3 years of strategy, and an entire board now ready to toast my genius. Instead, I felt nothing, just the dull hum of another victory that tasted like paper. The staff clapped when I walked out of the meeting. Isabel stood a little behind them, holding a folder, her face unreadable. While the others congratulated me, she simply said, "Congratulations, sir. The documents will be filed by tonight." That calm, steady tone again. It irritated me and, somehow, steadied me at the same time. "We're celebrating," I said. "Dinner. Lou Pavua. The whole executive team. Be there at 8. She blinked. "Should I confirm the reservation for you?" "For us," I corrected. "You're coming too." The room went still. One of the partners coughed, another hid a grin. I didn't clarify. Let them think what they wanted. Maybe I was bored. Maybe I wanted to see if she could survive outside her spreadsheets and silence. She hesitated, the faintest flicker of surprise crossing her face. "That's not necessary, sir. I'll have the reports finished tonight." "Then finish them early," I said, reaching for my coat. "Consider it mandatory." When I left the office, I told myself it was a whim. But somewhere beneath the arrogance, something else moved, a quiet curiosity I couldn't shake. By evening, the restaurant glowed like a jeweled cage. The partners were already there when I arrived. Loud laughter, polished shoes, empty charm. The waiter hovered near my chair, filling glasses before anyone had asked. She was late. Someone joked that maybe she had realized what kind of place this was and changed her mind. Another suggested she was too shy to sit among people who wore their confidence like armor. I said nothing. I stared at the door, pretending not to. When she finally walked in, the table fell silent. No one had ever looked at her that way before. Not them, not me. She moved carefully, like someone unused to attention, like every step cost something. She didn't speak right away. Just nodded politely as the waiter pulled out a chair. She sat across from me, composed, quiet, her eyes steady. "Thank you for inviting me, Mr. Hawthorne," she said softly. For a moment, I forgot the room, the deal, the noise. I only heard that calm voice again and saw a trace of something new in her expression. Not fear, not gratitude, something closer to defiance. The partners began their usual performance. 2 loud jokes, stories that ended in self-congratulation. She listened without comment. When they spoke to her, she answered with a precision that disarmed them. No flattery, no effort to impress. At one point, one of the men raised a glass toward her. "To the quiet woman behind the king." Without her, the empire would fall apart. A few chuckles followed. Isabel smiled faintly. "Then I should keep my mouth shut," she said, "so it stays standing." The laughter died down faster than it began. She turned her gaze to me then, calm as ever, and I realized she was perfectly aware of the power in silence. When the waiter cleared the plates, I asked if she was enjoying herself. "It's educational," she said. "How so?" "I never realized how much noise success makes." I almost laughed. "You don't like noise?" She tilted her head. "I prefer results." Something in my chest tightened. It was the first time anyone in years had spoken to me without trying to please me. When the dinner ended, she thanked everyone politely and left before the others had even finished their drinks. I watched her go, the sound of her footsteps fading down the marble hall. One of the partners leaned toward me, smirking. "You sure know how to pick your entertainment, Hawthorne." I ignored him. Entertainment was the last thing she'd been. She had come into that room and shifted something invisible, something in me I didn't want to name. I had invited her to expose her weakness. Instead, she revealed mine. The dinner should have ended at the valet stand like every other evening, with the board, polite handshakes, hollow laughter, the quiet promise to repeat it all again next quarter. But as I watched Isabel walk out into the cold night, I felt the room go strangely still inside me. The others lingered for brandy and gossip. I stayed only long enough to pretend I belonged there. My thoughts weren't with them. They were following the faint click of her heels down the marble floor. When I finally stepped outside, rain had started. The kind that doesn't fall, just hangs in the air and clings to you. She was standing under the restaurant's awning, phone in hand, waiting for a cab. "You shouldn't be out here alone," I said. She turned, startled. "I'm not exactly in danger, sir." Still, I gestured toward my car. "Let me take you home." She hesitated. "That isn't necessary." "It's not a favor," I said. "It's logistics." Her eyes studied me for a moment, then she nodded. "All right. Thank you." Inside the car, the silence felt heavier than the rain outside. I'd spent my life surrounded by talk, negotiations, calls, interviews, but this was different. Her quiet wasn't awkward. It was deliberate, like a language of its own. When the city lights slid across her face, I caught myself glancing too often. She looked not different, not transformed, just real. And that, somehow, was worse. "Did they treat you well?" I asked finally. "They treated me like part of the furniture," she replied. "But expensive furniture, so that's progress." I almost smiled. "You handled them better than I expected." She looked out the window. "I've spent years learning how to disappear in a room full of men who like the sound of their own voices." Her words landed quietly but sharp. "Why stay then?" "Because it's where the decisions are made," she said. "And if I'm lucky, sometimes I get to write them." For the first time, I didn't know what to say. When we reached her street, she asked the driver to stop at the corner. "This is fine." "There's no building here." "I'll walk." The wind tugged at her coat as she stepped out. I rolled down the window. "Isabel." She paused. "I meant what I said earlier. You were impressive tonight." She looked back at me, rain glinting in her hair. "No, sir," she said softly. "I was visible tonight. That's not the same thing." Then she turned and walked away. I sat there long after she vanished into the dark, the sound of her last words looping through my mind. I'd spent years surrounded by people desperate to be seen, yet the only one who had ever truly been invisible was the one I couldn't stop seeing now. That night, I didn't open a single email. Didn't check the numbers or the news. I poured a drink and stared at my own reflection in the window, the man who had everything and somehow managed to notice nothing. The rain outside blurred the skyline until it looked like the whole city was quietly weeping. And for reasons I couldn't explain, I almost wished I was too. The next morning, I told myself to forget about her. I buried the memory of that dinner under meetings, calls, and deadlines, the way I buried everything that threatened to make me human. But by afternoon, I caught myself glancing toward her desk through the glass wall of my office. She was there, calm, efficient, like the night before had never happened. Her hair was pulled back again, her glasses in place, her expression unreadable. I almost convinced myself I had imagined the spark between us. Then she looked up, and for one suspended second, our eyes met. Something passed through that glass, something quiet and dangerous. I looked away first. 2 days later, she brought me the revised Devereux report. "Leave it on the desk," I said, pretending to be focused on my screen. But she lingered, her presence brushing against the air like the scent of rain before a storm. "Is something wrong?" I asked without looking up. "I wanted to thank you," she said, "for the dinner. You don't owe me thanks." "Maybe not," she said softly, "but I wanted to anyway." I finally looked at her. There was a faint blush on her cheeks, but her gaze was steady. For a man used to power, that steadiness was disarming. "You surprised everyone," I said, "including me." Her lips curved into something close to a smile. You mean I survived? That too? She shifted slightly, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. It was nice, she said, being part of something instead of standing beside it. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us thickened, slow and electric. I wanted to tell her she'd never been beside anything, that she'd always been the quiet center of it all, even when no one saw her. But I didn't. Words like that didn't belong in offices. That evening, I found her still at her desk long after everyone had left. The city lights outside flickered across her face. You should go home, I said. I could say the same to you, she replied, not looking up from her screen. I leaned against the doorframe. You always stay this late? Sometimes. It's easier to think when no one's watching. There it was again, the honesty that cut straight through me. You work too hard, I said. She smiled faintly. So do you. I don't know another way to live. Maybe that's the problem, she murmured. Silence. The kind that isn't empty, but full of everything you cannot say. I stepped closer, close enough to see the thin scar tracing her wrist, the way her breath hitched when she realized how near I was. You're not afraid of me, I said quietly. Her eyes lifted, catching mine. Should I be? No, I said, though part of me wanted her to be, because fear would have been simpler than whatever this was. She closed her laptop, gathering her things with deliberate calm. Good night, Mr. Hawthorne. Good night, Isabel. When the door clicked shut behind her, the room felt colder. That night, I walked home instead of taking the car. The city was alive with lights and strangers, but all I could think about was the warmth of her voice, the way her smile had trembled before it settled into something sure. I had spent years mastering the art of distance, yet one woman's quiet presence had dismantled it in a matter of days. And though I tried to deny it, I already knew the truth. I was in trouble. The kind that doesn't ruin you all at once, but slowly, beautifully, with every heartbeat you pretend not to feel. The night it happened, the sky cracked open like it had been holding its breath too long. I was still at the office, the kind of night when the city turned to glass, reflections of headlights sliding across my walls, rain hitting the windows like small fists. Everyone had gone home hours ago. Everyone except her. Through the fog glass I saw her silhouette, still typing, still calm, the soft glow of her monitor painting her face in silver light. I should have told her to leave. Instead, I opened the door. You'll drown in work one day, I said. She looked up, tired but smiling. You first. Touché. Thunder rolled somewhere beyond the skyline. I sat on the edge of her desk, watching her fingers pause over the keyboard. You always stay this late? I like the quiet, she said. It's honest. You think quiet is honest? She nodded. People fill silence when they're afraid of being seen. You don't talk much either. Maybe I've run out of things worth saying. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. The air felt different, charged. Then she stood, gathering her coat. I should go. I followed her to the elevator, though I didn't plan to. When the doors opened, she hesitated. It's still raining, I said. Then I'll get wet. Let me drive you. You hate driving. I don't hate it, I said. I just don't like having nowhere to go. Her eyes softened. You're a strange man, Mr. Hawthorne. Stay long enough, and you'll stop calling me that. She smiled, small, fleeting, but it landed somewhere in my chest and stayed there. We rode the elevator in silence. Downstairs, the city was a blur of lights and rain. The valet offered my car, but she shook her head. I'll walk. It's just a few blocks. At least take my umbrella. She hesitated again, then accepted it, her fingers brushing mine. That brief touch, warm skin against cold rain, was enough to undo every line of defense I'd built. We walked side by side through the wet streets. Her hair began to curl at the ends, raindrops catching in it like tiny jewels. She laughed once when a car splashed water near the curb. The sound was low, unexpected, almost private. "Why are you looking at me like that?" she asked. "Like what?" "Like I'm something new." I met her eyes. "Maybe you are." She looked away, but the smile lingered. "You shouldn't say things like that." "Why not?" "Because people like you don't mean them." That stopped me. The umbrella tilted, rain sliding down my sleeve. "People like me? Men who think they're too busy to feel," she said softly. "And when they finally do, it's always too late." I wanted to argue, but she was right. Every relationship I'd ever had was built on convenience, timing, or loneliness, never on something that burned quietly like this. At her building, she handed back the umbrella. "Keep it," I said. "I don't plan on needing it again," she murmured. "Then keep it anyway, so I have an excuse to see you." Her breath caught, barely audible over the rain. "You don't need excuses, sir." She turned toward the door, but before she reached it, she stopped and looked back. "Good night, Daniel." It was the first time she'd ever said my name. Not Mr. Hawthorne, not sir. Just Daniel. When the door closed behind her, I stood there under the rain, umbrella forgotten, hard hammering like I was 20 again. And in that moment, I understood something brutal and beautiful. I could command boardrooms, bend markets by silence, but I couldn't stop thinking about the way she said my name. For 3 days after that night, I tried to live as if nothing had changed. Meetings, calls, investors, everything moved as it always did. But she had gotten under my skin in a way that made everything else feel like noise. I found myself looking for her reflection in elevator doors, her perfume in the hallway, her laughter in the distance that never came. When she finally stepped into my office again, the air shifted. She carried a stack of folders, her usual armor of calm perfection. "Your signature is needed on the new contracts," she said, her voice even. I took the papers, but didn't read them. "You've been avoiding me." Her eyes flicked up, startled, then steady again. "I've been working." "Is that what we're calling it?" A small silence fell between us, heavy enough to drown in. She took a slow breath. "What do you want me to say, Daniel?" The sound of my name on her lips again. It was soft, almost careful. I felt it more than I heard it. "I want you to tell me the truth," I said quietly. "That something happened that night. That I didn't imagine it." Her composure cracked, just a little. She looked down at her hands. "You didn't imagine it." That admission shouldn't have meant so much, but it hit like sunlight after too many gray days. I walked around the desk until I was close enough to see the faint pulse at her throat. "Then why are you running from it?" "Because," she whispered, "you're my boss. And because men like you don't fall for women like me." I almost laughed. "You still think this is about falling? Isn't it?" she asked, lifting her eyes to mine. "It's about seeing," I said. "And I see you, Isabel. For the first time, I see someone who doesn't need my name to matter." Her lips parted as if to reply, but she didn't. Instead, she stepped back, folding her arms as if to protect herself. "You shouldn't say things you can't take back." "Then tell me to stop," I said. "And I will." She didn't. The second stretched, soft and dangerous. Finally she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "You terrify me, Daniel." "Why?" "Because I don't know how to stop wanting something that can't last." I reached out, my hand brushing a loose strand of hair from her cheek. "Maybe it doesn't have to last. Maybe it just has to be real." Her eyes fluttered closed, just for a heartbeat, as if the weight of those words pressed too close. Then she pulled away, not sharply, but with the sadness of someone who wants to stay and knows she shouldn't. "I should go," she said, her tone trembling around the edges. "Will you?" She hesitated at the door. "Not yet." And then she left. I stood there, pulse still racing, her scent lingering in the room like the aftertaste of a promise. I'd spent half my life mastering control of my company, my image, my emotions. But control meant nothing now. Not when one woman could unravel me with a single look. That night, I couldn't sleep. I poured a drink and sat by the window, the city below glowing in restless light. Somewhere, she was out there, maybe reading, maybe sleeping, maybe wondering if she'd gone too far by telling me the truth. I already knew she had not gone far enough. Because the truth was, I was done pretending. I wanted her, in the quiet, in the chaos, in every version of the life I'd built to keep people out. And for the first time in years, that want didn't feel like weakness. It felt like breathing. The storm came faster than I expected. Not from the sky this time, from people. Rumors began to curl through the halls of Hawthorne Capital like smoke. My board whispered. My investors blinked too long in meetings. Everyone suddenly had something to say about my secretary. It started with one photo, me holding the elevator door for her. Nothing more. But in a world hungry for scandal, that was enough. The gossip papers called her the mysterious woman in black. The employees called her lucky. I called her nothing at all, because saying her name out loud felt like handing the world a weapon. She tried to pretend it didn't bother her. She came to work as usual, posture straight, eyes steady, pretending the stairs didn't burn. But I saw it, the exhaustion behind her calm, the way her fingers trembled when she handed me a file. "I can handle it," she said one morning, her voice too soft to convince either of us. "You shouldn't have to." She smiled faintly. "I knew what I was doing, Daniel." "No," I said. "You didn't. You walked into my world thinking merit was enough. It never is." Her gaze met mine, defiant even in hurt. "Then maybe I need to leave your world." The words hit harder than I wanted to admit. That evening, she sent an email, short, polite, final. Asterisk, thank you for the opportunity. Effective immediately, I resign. Asterisk. I stared at the screen for a long time, reading it again and again, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something less final. I went to her apartment. I told myself it was to discuss her transition, but that was a lie I didn't even believe. Rain was falling again, as if the city itself couldn't stand to watch. Her window light was on when I arrived. She opened the door wearing a sweater too big for her shoulders, hair loose, eyes tired but still steady. "You shouldn't be here," she said. "Then tell me to go." She didn't. She stepped aside instead, letting me in. The place was small, books stacked on the floor, a kettle hissing faintly on the stove. It smelled like chamomile and rain. So unlike the world I lived in that for a second I couldn't speak. "I read your email," I finally said. "I assumed you would. You don't have to quit." "I do," she said quietly. "Because if I stay, it won't be about work anymore. It'll be about us. And your world doesn't forgive women for that." I took a step closer. "Let it hate me, then. Let them talk. It doesn't work that way," she said. "Men like you survive scandals. Women like me get buried by them." Her voice cracked just enough to break something inside me. I reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. Our fingers fit like two halves of something that had been waiting too long to be whole. "I don't care about the company," I said. "Not tonight. Not when you're here." She shook her head, but her eyes betrayed her, soft, wanting, afraid. "You'll regret this tomorrow. Then let me have tonight to remember." The distance between us vanished. I don't remember who moved first, her or me. All I remember is the warmth of her breath against mine, the small sigh that escaped when our lips met. It wasn't a kiss born of desperation. It was quieter, heavier, like both of us knew it could ruin everything and didn't care. When it broke, she rested her forehead against my chest. "What are we doing?" she whispered. "Finally being honest," I said. Outside, thunder rolled again, steady and deep, but inside that small apartment, the world had gone utterly still. For the first time in years, I wasn't the man in control. I was just a man who'd fallen for the woman everyone else had failed to see. 3 months passed before I saw her again. 3 months of noise, headlines, and silence that gnawed through the walls of my empty penthouse. Isabel Gray became a ghost once more. No trace, no contact, just absence. The city kept moving, deals kept closing, but every success felt hollow, like applause after a funeral. Then came the charity gala at the plaza. I went because I had to, not because I wanted to. The ballroom shimmered with chandeliers and hypocrisy, men in black suits, women in sequins, champagne that tasted like regret. I was halfway through my second drink when the crowd shifted and the air changed. A murmur moved through the room. Then I saw her. She stood near the entrance, bathed in golden light. Her hair fell loose around her shoulders, her dress soft and simple, the color of moonlight. No one could ignore her now, least of all me. Every man turned to look. Every woman pretended not to. But she looked only at me. For a moment, I couldn't move. My pulse stuttered the way it did the first time I'd said her name aloud. She crossed the floor slowly, gracefully, each step steady, as if she'd already made peace with everything she left behind. "Good evening, Mr. Hawthorne," she said when she reached me. Her voice was calm, but her eyes, those eyes, still held that same quiet fire. "I thought you left the city," I said. "I tried," she admitted. "But I realized I didn't want to keep running from the place where I finally felt seen." I didn't realize I was smiling until she smiled back. "You look—" I stopped myself. Words felt useless. "Different. I stopped hiding," she said softly. "Turns out, it wasn't the world I was afraid of. It was myself." Before I could answer, a photographer's flash burst across the room. Somewhere behind us, I heard a whisper, "Asterisk, that's her. The secretary." Asterisk. But for once, I didn't care. I reached for her hand, and she didn't pull away. "They'll talk again," she murmured. "Let them," I said. "They always do." The music shifted, something slow, aching, familiar. I held out my hand. "Dance with me." She hesitated only a heartbeat before nodding. When I drew her close, everything else disappeared, the lights, the crowd, the months of distance. It was just her heartbeat against mine, steady and real. "You shouldn't do this," she whispered near my ear. "Not here." "I've spent my whole life worrying about what people think," I said. "Tonight I'm done." She lifted her head, searching my face. Whatever she found, there must have been enough, because she smiled, the kind of smile that makes years of loneliness dissolve. The music swelled, soft and slow, and for the first time, I realized what it meant to belong to a moment completely. When the song ended, she didn't step away. "So what now?" she asked quietly. "Now?" I said, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "Now you stop being invisible. And I stop pretending I ever wanted to be." She laughed under her breath, that low, beautiful sound that had haunted me for months. "You always did like impossible things." "Not impossible," I said. "Just rare." And there, in a room filled with money and masks, I kissed her. Not as her employer, not as the man who'd once made her feel small, but as the man who'd finally learned what it meant to see someone, and be seen in return. Outside, the city lights burned bright and endless, But for me, the night began and ended in her eyes.